Let's see if this works. I hope everybody can hear me. So exciting to see familiar faces in the crowd again. So hello, everybody. Well, I'll start off by saying if I were to kind of put a hashtag to the start of 2022, I think the phrase I would choose would be Great Resignation, because everybody was talking about it. It was haunting me in my dreams because some were really afraid, they wanted to be prepared, most were actually going through with it, then we had some who just didn't agree with it and whatnot. But in the meantime also, we had a lot of other things happening, right? There were like these talent shortages that we had to deal with. We don't have enough skills to grow the business. Then there was also right in the middle of where we were still going back and forth with office, back to the office, remote work, hybrid, how do we do this? We don't know, still stuck there somewhere. Then came the inflation, the focus on productivity. Then we were talking to our CFOs and CEOs, and their smiles were kind of turning upside down, and we don't always like that. So anyway, a lot of stuff was happening. Fast forward to now, beginning of 2023, the word we hear the most, at least these days in the news, are layoffs. So every time I open the news of global newspapers or articles, whatever, layoffs happening mostly, yes, in the Americas, coming to Europe as well. But hey, most of you guys are part of international organizations, so somehow, somewhere, directly or indirectly, you are being impacted, if not already, you will be in some way. Now, not to sound like very pessimistic and like paint a very dull picture, the thing is that all the words you see in the middle, they're still there. It's not like we're over and done with all of that. I think it was day before yesterday, I read that eBay is laying people off, like 500 people off globally, but at the same time, they want to hire in very high potential domains of their business. So layoffs and hiring, kind of contradictory, but hey, they do go kind of hand in hand as well, which begs the question, as HR leaders, your role in sitting down with the business and actually strategizing to future-proof it. We are not working in isolation anymore. If I look at this question that you see on the screen now, does HR already have a seat at the table? This is a centuries-old question. We've been asking over and over again. But I do want to mention one of the panel guests that I will introduce shortly, Sanjeev from Swiss Re. When I asked him this question, you know what his response was? He was like, yeah, but is HR tall enough to have that seat at the table? Are we providing solutions good enough to solve a problem for the business, for us to become indispensable? I'll leave you with that food for thought, of course. But if you want to find Sanjeev, you'll see him on the stage, so feel free to find him later on. In any case, my point here is that you cannot be working in isolation. You need to be working with the business if you want HR to become indispensable. Here are some of the priorities that we saw. These are the ones that you guys listed, top employers in APAC. And if you take a quick glance on it, yes, they're business priorities, but if you also look at the people strategy priorities, and you really try to think about it, creating a high-performance culture, aligning vision, values, and purpose, developing new leadership capabilities, how many of these can you claim that are only HR-related topics? They're not. How are you going to create a high-performance culture if your leaders are not on board, if your managers are not on board, if your employees are not really feeling what they should be feeling in order to perform well? How is that performance enablement going to come into the picture? Similarly, building leadership capabilities, you're not going to do that alone. So again, reinforcing that idea. And when we look at the trends that we saw in the last year among top employers in APAC, so again, this group right here, I can really spit out 3 major keywords. And then we'll have a discussion in these two panels later on to talk more about what different top employers are doing, who are at different points in their journey. First of all, the employee sitting right at the center of everything, obviously. And here I'm referring to the employee experience. And I'm not only talking about the experience of employees who are there right now within your organization. Think about it from the perspective, yes, there's a slowed economic growth and all that, but you're still looking for some skills that don't exist. And you all know that employee experience is going to be the competitive advantage for your organizations if you want to stay ahead of the game. But we should not also forget the experience you're providing to your candidates, but also think about all those employees who are being laid off. What is the experience they're getting? How does that fit into the whole scheme of things? How do you make it holistic? If another circle that surrounds the employee is that of leadership. How are you equipping your leaders to keep their finger on the pulse? How are they ensuring the well-being of their employees, the listening strategies, and all that good stuff that traditionally, historically, were HR topics? But hey, they've moved to your line managers, to your leaders. How are they being equipped in the whole scheme of things? Last but not least is purpose. When we talk about purpose, it's a whole another ball game, right? It's something that's organization-wide. It's huge. It trickles down to individual employee purpose, like me as an individual. What's my purpose? What do I relate to? How does it get connected to the shared purpose of all my other colleagues and, on the larger scale, the organization as a whole? It also extends to topics that are very relevant these days, like diversity, equity, inclusion, like sustainability. How does all of this feed into your EVPs? How are you driving that purpose-led organization, purpose-led people practices, and all that good stuff? We are going to talk a lot about all of these things, but enough from me for now. With that said, I'd like to begin our first panel, which is largely going to focus on employee experience, but obviously, for obvious reasons, I think it's going to touch upon different aspects here and there because it's supposed to be a holistic picture and not something you can take in isolation. So, first of all, I would like to put the spotlight on Sanjeev Agarwal from Swiss Re. Sanjeev, I think all of our panel guests come with this extensive experience, and I cannot do justice to putting up everything here. Sanjeev is head of HR at Swiss Re, with 20+ years of experience in HR, previously also worked for HSBC. Welcome, Sanjeev. Next, please welcome Satish Kannan, representing Infosys. Infosys, as we all know, is a global market leader in next-gen digital services and consulting. Satish also brings with him 22+ years of experience in diverse and multicultural HR disciplines. So we're very happy to have him here as well. Last but not least, Patricia Lamb from Alstom. Patricia, again, extremely experienced in leading and executing HR strategies in matrix and diverse business ecosystems. So, well, thank you, all three of you, for joining us today. I'm going to get my cards because so I can do justice to this panel discussion. Well, Sanjeev, since I've already put you on the spot, don't be that scared. They're nice people. What I remember from our very first discussion is you mentioned that employee experience is misunderstood. I would love for you to elaborate a little bit more so we can get some division in the room here.
You really want to put me on the spot. Okay, hello everybody. Before I start, I must tell you my team, some members of my team are here and they made me promise that I'll not embarrass them. So I'll try my best. Okay. For me, employee experience, Amara, is actually not a new term. We are probably discovering it today and creating a function out of it, a practice out of it. But employees have always had a moment of truth experience of their employers. We used to focus on EVP, that was to influence an employee experience, right? Today, we are focusing a lot deeper into that. And employee experience can be, a number of different things. It's not an initiative that changes employee experience. Employee experience is everything that starts from when the person is actually a candidate for you, the hard experience of, let's say, applying to your company as a candidate, the soft experience of how they are made to feel during an interview, and you can actually take the whole journey through the organization of that employee and identify all the spots, the touch points, just like we would do a customer experience journey. And today, while we are focused on employee experience as an emerging trend in HR, and I know a lot of people in HR are working on how do we improve employee experience, I think it's not just about HR. I like to relate this to culture. Culture is not just HR driving culture in an organization. I think employee experience sits in the same space. It's not just HR or a function or a person who's positioned to kind of drive employee experience.
Well, sometimes I also wonder, like, from customer experience perspective, from customer success perspective, we've had years of experience of what works, what doesn't work. Why don't we just pick up those models and replicate it to our employees and create experience around them? If I were to share a couple of stats here, we saw that from our survey, specifically looking at the APAC region, which is the point of discussion here, a lot of top employers are personalizing, for example, their technology platforms. That's being one part of the journey, right? But if you look at how many are really empowering employees in terms of managing their flexibility that's being offered, and that part of the experience, the number drops significantly. Which brings me to you, Satish, because Infosys has been one of those companies I have loved talking about employee experience with, because I've seen a lot of things being done in the past where you've put employee in the center and design stuff around it. Would love to hear your thoughts and few examples on how it has been.
Thank you, Amara, for having me here, and thanks, Sanjeev, for setting the context. See, broadly, there are three important drivers for our employee experience framework, right? First and foremost, I think we are sort of settling in this hybrid model of work. Everybody has sort of settled that some component of the work will be delivered at on-site from office, some component of the work will be delivered remotely, and the vast majority of employees, at least 60 to 70%, would be in this hybrid model. So how do we create a very uniform and consistent experience across all these personas? I think that's the first driver for our experience framework. The second aspect, I think you talked about technology. It keeps changing all the time. In fact, I was just, in the last week, there was this conversation, can we leverage, Chat GPT to address most of the HR help desk queries? So I'm sure, there would be a time that we will have a panel discussion on that as well, right? So we are not, too far away. So things keep changing all the time. So we are looking at, there are applications, there are services that we deliver through our intranet, through our internet, and now most of the services are delivered through the mobile app, the Infimi app, which we talked about. So how do we create, again, some sort of a unified experience leveraging technology? That's the second driver. The third aspect is, I think, the cultural aspect. I think this is where Sanjeev talked about. It's all about, while there is this larger employee value proposition, there are things that employees experience on a day-to-day basis. Those are truly the moments that matter, right? So how do we create inclusive culture, empathetic behavior, right? I think the cultural aspect is also driving the employee experience framework. So broadly, these are the three elements. If I probably take one example, almost 60% of our revenues are digital revenues, digital projects, right? So we are talking about creating digital talent at scale. We introduced something called DQ quotient right? So rather it's a digital quotient. It's a one single, data-driven measure, an objective data-driven measure, which helps us to measure the digital, maturity of our talent at an individual level, at an unit level, and also at an enterprise level, right? For example, the score can go from 10 to 100, right? And broadly there are three elements into this. So we drive this through our learning and career portal. So every employee, 90% of our employees are technology employees, they would be able to see what is their digital quotient. There are three components. So one, it's about building the competency, and that happens by helping them to learn new skills. While you are working on a project, you can acquire a skill tag. That's the first part, giving them the expertise. The second part is about exposure. So you get an opportunity to work on a project based on the skill tag that you've got. You gain at least a 6 months to 1 year kind of an experience. Then you move on to the third stage. It's about delivering value, right? Either you are creating a value for Infosys end client, or you are creating a value for Infosys. You are demonstrating thought leadership. You are delivering a business solution. So all of it is resulting in some sort of tangible values. So we have defined scores for developing competency, for demonstrating your capability on the project, and for delivering value, right? So from an individual employee perspective, today my score is 20. How do I take this to 80? So what kind of learning opportunities the company can provide you? The employee himself can customize his digital career journey in the company, right? So what kind of skills I can develop? What are the projects, opportunities that are available, right? And where I can deliver value, right? So I think this is something which has really worked well in the last 2 years. I don't think, I wouldn't claim that we have perfected this model, but we have seen a very good response, both at the individual level, because they are able to see how they are progressing when compared to the rest of the organization. And we are able to see how we are progressing as a company in terms of on the digital maturity index.
I really like that example. Thank you for sharing it. I think when we look at employee experience, I think the self-driven career and learning and the development component is a huge chunk of it, right? Because I think also links back to what David was talking about earlier, the recognition part, the development part, like me as an individual, how do I take it forward myself? That's really a big chunk of my experience. And the second comment, so a lot of organizations in this space are, not a lot I would say, I take that back, a few, are moving towards skills-based organization because it's easier said than done, of course. And I think that's already a very, I wouldn't say a start, but you've tried and experimented with a lot of things.
Yeah, we are a company with a history of 40 years. So in the last 3 years or so, we are pivoting more as a skill-based organization than a role-based organization, right? Yeah. And it's going to take so much of time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the second one was the three-pronged framework that you mentioned. I think we discussed also that it's good for any organization of any size to actually look at it from that perspective because it can be universally applicable. It doesn't have to be like a 350,000 plus employee company, but something that you can start off with. Thanks, Satish. Patricia, coming to you, and linking back to career and learning being part of employee experience, would love to hear what are some steps that Alstom is maybe taking to support that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here to share what we have been done in Alstom. We are happy to share, I would say that Alstom has been working a lot on employee experience, and then we are using, in our strategies, this is our top pillars to develop a consistent and employee experience through digitalizations. So in terms of, I would say, learning, we have our global, the learning organization, Alstom University, that is our award-winning, I would say, the learning powerhouse. And then we have developed, I would say, the digital, the platform to offer different types of learnings, say, both for professionals and, say, the personal, the choices. So we are empowering, I would say, our employees driving their, say, the career and then development in the organization through digitalizations and learning. So in this island portal, employees can make their own choice, say for contents like, say, certified courses, say the TED Talks, even I would say for our engineers, they can experience through virtuals, say the learnings in the portals. So in terms of, I would say, career, say the path, so we also have developed, say, digitalization tools supported by AI called My Career Path. So this is, I would say, a portal that employees can update their, say, profiles in the portal with their competency, and then match, I would say, that the jobs available in the organization. So they can overview, I would say, what are the available jobs, I would say, in the organizations, and make to understand the gaps and then the skill sets required for certain positions.
I imagine that there are some sort of trainings or support available for the employees to actually use this, because often the pitfall is you can have as fancy systems as possible in place, but if me as an employee, if I don't know how to drive a car, I will not be able to get anywhere. So are there any specific coaching or trainings also available for your employees, I imagine?
Yes, yes. Apart from the digitalizations, we have a lot of, I would say, coaching, mentoring, say, the sessions, I would say, for our people managers as well. So help them out, I would say, to guide the employees on the career path. Yep.
I'm very passionate about that, like, equipping the managers to be able to equip your employees, because HR is not dealing with employees every day, it's the managers. They're the first sort of line of defense. So enabling them to actually manage this, I think is, well, at least for me, a topic I'm very passionate about. I'll come back to you, Patricia, as well, because I do have another very relevant question for you. But in the meantime, I'd like to involve the audience here as well. I'm sure you have used Mentimeter before. If you could just go to menti.com, enter that code, and vote on this statement. The statement is, investing in employee experience program does wonders. So while you're all busy with that, I'll come back to Patricia. I think at Alstom, employee experience is actually sitting under your employer branding function or department. I'm very curious to know what kind of impact has it created for your EVP, for your employer branding, mixing the two in one.
Yeah, we see now employer branding is not only, I would say, about communications. So we are projecting, say, like real, I would say, employee stories as to tell in front of internally or externally through our, say, the employer branding initiative. A lot has been done now, I would say, is social media campaigns with our employers as ambassadors, talking about, say, their stories. We are using, I would say, a lot of people managers to share their stories to help in our talent acquisition strategies. Because we see that it is important that the real life experience sharing, storytelling is more impactful, more authentic, and then we wanted to create, I would say, a more emotional and humans, I would say, the experience to internally and externally. So this has been, I would say, impacting a lot, I would say, what we need to do more in terms of employer branding.
Yeah, great. I like that because, I mean, yeah, to be honest, like, I don't necessarily want to hear from the CEO of the company. I'd rather hear it from someone who's lived through the experience. So it's a great way to involve employee advocacy into it, directly, indirectly, also impacting the existing employee experience in that way. So thanks for that, Patricia. So let's see, what do we have here? So I think most of the people in the room agree that investing in employee experience program does wonders, and a few disagree. be very curious. If we had time, we would involve the audience, like with the roaming mic as well. But Satish, do you have any comments on this? It was a trick question.
I know. I would tend to agree. I mean, I just wanted to take one example. We have looked at units in Infosys where the customer experience scores are quite high. We were able to correlate and see their employee experience scores are also quite high. So I think, it goes back to that, if you do, investment, if you have that focus in experience, I think at some point, it would definitely be able to complement and have an influence on your customer experience outcomes. So I tend to agree with majority of them.
Great. Sanjeev, any comments on this from your perspective?
Okay. I'm now going to let myself lose a little bit. Sorry. I disagree. And I feel employee experience is not a program. It cannot be a program. We are falling into a trap by getting down the program rabbit hole. Employee experience would not change just because you created nice posters, nice slogans, you did a party, you created some experience one-off. That's not employee experience, right? I agree with Satish. It has a very, very large correlation. If your employee is happy, you will get good customer retention, sales, whatever metric you want to measure. Equally, if you are able to isolate that to one part of your business, that means that employee experience is being driven by something local in that team, where the employee experience is high and therefore your customer experience is higher. And that localized, I will probably put my money on the leader of that team or that part of the business who's able to drive that employee experience to be a very high level. It's not being done through a program, right? So for me, focus on employee experience absolutely is a critical aspect, but treating it as a program to invest on and say, let's run one year of celebrating birthdays, that's not going to change it much. So my experience is, it's like culture. It has to be on the agenda and we talk about it and basically, how do you build culture? You build culture from the top. You are consistent in your actions. There is no culture which is bad or good. Culture is consistency. Consistency of action so that it becomes predictable. I know if I walk into this company, this is what the company's response will be in this situation. Because it is consistent, it sticks to what it says. That's employee experience. No employee experience is good or bad. It's just, what can I expect? We are consumers. Every brand that we use, we have a consistency in our expectation. We know if I walk into St. Regis, this is what I would expect. But if I go to a different hotel, my expectation would be different. It doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's just sticking to what I promise. Sorry, long answer, but that's my view.
Please, I think we're all ears here, so. Which, very good point, I think, and I tend to agree. Like, I think maybe the pitfall here, this was a tricky question. I'll tell you why, because I specifically used EX program to isolate it being looked at as like a one-off initiative versus like an approach of sorts, like a more holistic way. Like, for example, the examples that Satish, so yeah, whereas we might agree with the statement, but I know in practicalities, you are obviously looking at it in a much broader framework for that matter. I'd like to come back to you, Sanjeev, because you touched upon something, again, like role of the leadership in the whole scheme of things. Different companies are at different points. Like some, you have to start somewhere. So they may be looking at one initiative or like somewhere to start and, okay, how do we take this forward? And often they run into a brick wall when they're pitching this to their leadership team, like, to get that buy-in, to at least get started. Some are maybe looking at building a whole team or hiring experienced managers or whatever the case may be, any tips you'd like to share that we can use to get that buy-in from leadership?
And buy-in for what?
To invest, to make change in experience,
Employee experience.
employee experience.
Yeah. So if we have to make a pitch to get that, we are starting on the back foot to start with,
Very good point.
right? What I think is missing is the business case element. What is in it for the organization, right? We will be able to define that once we understand what is in it for the employees, right? Half the time we get excited about the project, the initiative, and we create those decks and we go for investment case. A lot of times what we don't end up seeing is how does the business benefit from it? And what is it that the employee benefits from it? You know, we've been talking about investment in leaders for leadership skill building and development of skills in people. In my experience, and you know, this whole development piece has changed over the years. There was time when most organizations used to run academies, would have their own in-house programs, you would have trainers, managers of trainers. Over the years, it has gotten outsourced quite a bit. Now we see platforms that are offering skills. And this is a recent revelation for me. So the best platform to learn anything today, in your view, what is it? I'm a non-tech HR guy, right? If I want to learn Python, what's the best platform? Where should I go? Anybody? Sorry? Coursera or something? YouTube. I have learned so much on YouTube, I'm amazed. I think organizations should just make YouTube available to people. And probably that will happen. You know, so these talked about ChatGPT. What will happen next? ChatGPT, maybe not GPT-3, maybe GPT-4 version of ChatGPT, will actually answer all your queries. This is going to happen. What will you do with all the HR service delivery folks sitting in the back? And that brings me to your other point. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. We talk about layoffs and people getting hired at the same time. It's actually not layoffs. It's a skill map refresh of the organization. Organizations are letting go of skills that they don't see future with, and they're hiring for skills that they want. And therefore, as individuals who are selling our skills in the market, we need to wake up and reskill ourselves. And I bring it back to your point, use YouTube. Not that I'm affiliated with anything, but use it.
Yeah, do you have shares?
I wish.
Great. Thank you so much, Sanjeev. Always appreciated. But clearly, again, very great points. Another sort of challenge that we see in the whole employee experience bit is once a company decides to go a certain direction, yeah, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to map out moments that matter, this is the investment we're going to make, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you've put stuff in place. There's not much follow-up that happens from here on. So it's like, okay, as HR, we are proud. We mapped this whole beautiful thing out. Look, we also remapped it for remote working. And it's going to work beautifully because this is what our employees are asking for. But what then we really don't think about again is how do we keep our finger on the pulse? And that brings me to you, Satish. How does Infosys do it? What kind of listening strategies do you sort of utilize to make sure? Because it could change, right? Like from YouTube to whatever maybe next. How does that happen?
No, I think it's an evolving journey in itself, no doubt about it. But it is important, right? I think we have kept it very simple. So there are a set of commitments that we have given to our current and potential employees, right? So which is what our employee value proposition is all about, right? So we have defined what goes into that. Now we are looking at an employee experience should have a very structured approach right? And in a way that your employee experience is also part of your value proposition, right? So that's how we have defined it, right? So what goes in every day, in a way it should, complement what you have committed to your current and potential employees. I think that's the first part. And having a very structured approach linking both would really be helpful. And somewhere you need to link this to logical outcomes, and post that you would be able to make a business case, you can go and seek investments, right? So that it's not seen as something one-off, right? That's one. The second part is in a company like us, so we have around 140 critical people processes, right? So because at the end of the day, an IT company is all about people and investments in people. In that 140 processes, we had picked up 15 as something which is very critical and has a significant impact on our employee value proposition. Now we are focusing on those 15 processes to see how we can create a superior experience. And therefore our investments and all the strategy and structure goes around it, right? So that it is not seen of one-off. The second aspect is, of course, you talked about the employee journey mapping, the employee life cycle, the moments that matter. I think the listening posts are extremely important, right? So we, while we have our regular surveys and all that, we had broadly looked at 3 ways of doing this. One, we call it milestone based, right? So at the time of joining, so when they complete 3 months in the company, 6 months in the company, maybe at the end of 1 year, right? So there are certain feedback which you are taking. The second aspect is event based, right? So when they go through a reskilling program, when they go through a career moves program, right? When they go through a talent mobility program, what is the feedback that you are getting from employees at the point of service, right? That's the second part. The third part is perception based. These are your regular, satisfaction surveys, we call it EVP index, culture index, resilience index. There are many things, that we take as a constant feedback. But what we do is we curate all this data and facilitate interactions, quality interactions between managers and employees, leaders and employees, and the peer groups. And we also put this data out to the HR to partner with their business. I think we call it the experience loop or feedback loop. I think that is extremely important because things keep changing on the ground, and you need to have a way of taking those inputs, and it should go back into the system, and you continuously evolve your process, your experience over a period of time. So we call it experience loops.
I absolutely admire how he puts everything in like a framework, right? So like you can just remember the keywords and we can go home and replicate it. Thank you for that. That's an admirable quality to have, but makes perfect sense. I was also curious. First of all, I admire that it's taking the managers, again, enabling the managers to use those insights to take action, right? Like driving behavior in a certain way or whatsoever. Are there also any other adoption analytics that you use? I'm saying this because I'm in a client success, so we always look at like, okay, how are the systems being used by the client? Are they not? Are they? Where can we add more value? If it's not being used, scrap it. Anything along those lines that's on the horizon?
So I think one thing what we have done, I would say is we have made all of this data and analytics real time, right? It's no more the individual managers have to come to HR or they reach out to some function to look at the data. So every day morning, like for example, I can see the pulse score of my team on a daily basis. It gets refreshed. So people can go on feedback on event-based, milestone-based, perception-based. It gets refreshed on a daily basis, right? Most importantly, it also tells me where I stand as a manager with respect to the rest of the group, what other managers are doing differently. And it also sort of gives me a gentle nudge. 80% of the managers are doing a frequent performance engagement discussion, right? A check-in discussion. Maybe that would help you to improve your scores on performance management. So there is a gentle nudge that we had built into the system, which is much more intuitive. It's no more about just putting the data out there, analyzing and saying this is good, this is bad. It's also about driving right kind of behaviors through the data. I think, I can go into Infamy and look at, what is my team thinking, and is there anything that I need to do differently, which maybe the other managers are doing. Now we would also linked all the rewards and recognition and incentives, everything to that. So there are managers who are doing really good on EVP index, right? The managers who are doing really, really well on, career and learning, right? We also have managers who are scoring extremely high on culture index. So we go and reward those managers. We call them as people managers. So there are incentives, there are recognition programs which are designed around that. So one is you get the data, you make it real time, then you drive certain behaviors based on the data. You also help the managers to improve their scores on various parameters. And finally, there is a recognition built around this. So it's all interlinked.
Very inspiring, I have to say. Thank you, Satish. But what I was a little bit, not disappointed, but a bit surprised to also see in our data from last year was that when it comes to like really listening strategies, so integrated listening strategies where you're keeping your finger on the pulse, other than just doing engagement surveys or pulse surveys, less than 50% of top employers in APAC are currently working on something like that. So perhaps something to think about when you're you're back to work, brainstorming what comes next. Patricia, yes. We've been talking about the role of managers. Satish very elaborated on how Infosys equips managers, gives them insights to drive certain behaviors and impact employee experience. What kind of role are managers at Alstom playing in driving employee experience in general?
We are very lucky. I think we are partnering with our managers in the employee experience. I think they are fully engaged, fully aware of the importance. So there are a number of I would say, apart from the regular, say, team talks, talent forums, talent dialogues with the different employee groups. In Asia Pacific, we have, I would say, quite a number of initiatives in partnering with the people managers. We have our signature program, Development Week in India, that we have engaged people managers coming, say, to talk about, say, the successful story, setting the role models, sharing experiences, I would say, with employees. Not only, I would say, in the Asia Pacific region, also, say, inviting leaders outside of the regions to come and share experience. Another recent event initiative I would say that we have developed in APAC is the reverse mentoring program that senior leaders, I would say, have the opportunity to do a reverse, I would say, the role as a mentee, partnering with some junior mentor. So with this experience, I would say the managers are able to get, I would say, a lot of new insights and a lot of, I would say, quite insightful dialogues, exchange has been happening during the 3 months, I would say, the mentoring journey. And the result, I would say, is very positive. A lot of, I would say, practical ideas, I would say, that can be implemented, say, in the work environment. So these are, I would say, a lot of, I would say, the programs, initiatives that from HR side, we engage more, I would say, our people managers in the process for enhancing a better, say, the employee experience.
I like the example of reverse mentoring because it impacts experience on both ends, right? Like the employee is able to also provide something back to the manager or people leaders, impacting their own experience. Like this is how I would look at it. So to make them see experience in a different light. So great example there. Thank you, Patricia. Now, one of the things that, again, is very capable of dividing the room here is where should employee experience sit? I'd like to quickly, for the last few seconds that we have left, again, invite you to go to Mentimeter and vote on that. Should employee experience be part of shared services? Well, a lot of disagreeing for now. some that agree. This is very interesting. I expected it to be more of a 50-50, but it's not. So most of you guys do not agree that it should be part of shared services. I hope not everybody from Infosys is voting the same way. We just have a few seconds left. I'd invite any of the panel guests to comment on this if you'd like.
See, maybe this is my take on this. See, broadly, I would look at, there are two ways of looking at employee experience, right? So one is what we call experience by design, right? So, for example, we have decided in the context of Infosys, out of 140, we would look at this 15 processes which are critical for the company, and this has to be consistent and uniform, whether somebody is joining in US, somebody is joining in Singapore or India, there has to be a consistent way of doing things. So we are very clear that wherever we have picked up, say, experience by design, we are going to have some sort of a centralized kind of an approach, a uniform, for example, DQ. If some employee in US comes and says, my DQ score is 50, we all understand what it means. So there is a standard measure, standard tools and technology, a standard way of recognizing people, right? So it's experience by design. So you take a centralized approach. The second aspect is experience by user interactions. So this is something which you would like to, mostly decentralize and leave it to the line managers to create that experience, or the HR managers on the ground and all that. So we were trying to find a balance between what aspects of experience should be by design and what aspect we should leave it to the user, right? Maybe in a larger company, you might need somebody to look at holistically these 15 processes and do things in a centralized fashion, right? So you can call it a COE or a centralized function, a group of people coming together and doing things. It need not be restricted only to HR. You will also have other stakeholders, including other BEF functions, business functions and all that. Maybe in a smaller setup, the people who are creating experience by design are also the people who are facilitating the interactions on the ground. In that sense, you don't need to really separate it out, right? So it makes sense to have. So therefore, this agree and disagree it depends on your evolution journey and where you stand in terms of your experience journey and the size of the organization, the scale, what you want to centralize and decentralize. So I would probably leave it there.
Great. Thank you so much, Satish, for those sort of closing comments. I think it wraps it up pretty nicely. The interest of time, I think we need to wrap up now. I hope that you got some bits and pieces here and there for inspiration, and you'd be able to take some things out of this panel discussion and apply them in your organizations if you haven't started that journey already. I'd like to thank all the panelists for being here. If you could just stay on the
is titled Purpose Straight from the Heart, which is a very pertinent topic at the moment. So truly successful businesses embed purpose in every action, aiming to leave an enduring impact on people's lives. Increasingly, customers and employees are looking to engage with companies that help them achieve their personal and professional goal. Now, to moderate this panel, please join me to welcome back on stage the lovely Amara. And joining on stage, we have Teo Meng Hui, Sanofi's talent head for Asia. Please join me to welcome Kelly Tay from Boehringer Ingelheim's Head of Talent Leadership Organization for Southeast Asia and South Korea. Last but definitely not the least, Fred Baru, Senior Vice President Customer Success Management at Amadou. And handing the time over to you, Mara. Take it away.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Yeah, it's me again, but you have a fresh new set of faces. We'll be really chatting about a real important topic, which is purpose. I think if you recall what I shared earlier, the employee in the center, leadership around it, and then purpose kind of surrounding everything that we are doing these days, because everything is sort of expected to be purpose-led from customer's perspective, from employee perspective, and whatnot. So before I go and dive into the expertise of these lovely people here, we'd like to involve you guys a little bit more, and let's start off with this statement here. Love to see you vote, and it would be great to have a few comments from the audience on this as well. Purpose is fluff, not much action. What's your take on it? See, it's good to see somebody disagrees and somebody agrees. Give it a couple of seconds. But in the meantime, anybody in the audience has a comment to make. Whether you agree or disagree, we won't hold it against you. So feel free to give your thoughts. Don't be shy. Is it the impact of, is it a reverse effect of coffee, or kind of? Wow, we have a quiet audience, so I think maybe I'll need to switch to you guys. Well, let's maybe start with you, Fred. Do you have any comments on that statement?
I will definitely disagree with the statement. I think, so first of all, a disclaimer, I'm not an HR person. That's the first time I see so many HR people at once.
Be nice to him.
You don't buy it? Okay, okay. I'm a business leader, so I'm of course works very closely with my HR partners. We actually, in my company, we call them people and culture. So it's banned to use HR as a word, people and culture, which is a very purposeful meaning for that team. So purpose, yes, critical. For me, it's critical to have one personally first. I mean, as a person, if you have one, and how does that translate into an organization, in a team at all levels of the organization? How do you do it? I guess we are going to discuss this, but definitely I would disagree with the fluff side of it.
Really good to know your opinion. Kelly,
Hey,
what do you
hi,
think?
thank you for having me here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to have a business person here with us today, and I would actually stand on your side that I'm also disagreeing with this, because I do see that purpose is something that is so powerful. It's not just up in the air, fairy things that we talk about, but it can impact us in the work that we do every day.
Lovely. I'm glad we have 2 votes. Let's go for the third one.
So shall I be different?
Please, we loved a divided room. so.
I think if it's, of course, we would be agreeing to this statement, right? Otherwise, we won't be in this room talking about being top employers. So I think when the purpose is meaningful and is connected to the everyday life of our employees, that's not going to be fluff. Yeah, it's fluff when the employees cannot be connected to the purpose.
So we have a unanimous vote here. So whoever voted the other way around in the audience, we'll find you later. But if you want to speak up now, please do so.
Yes, share your views.
Yeah, show yourself. Well, I think I'll start off with you, Mingwei, since you're speaking already. I think when we first started chatting about the topic, what really struck me was you spoke about how Sanofi is activating its purpose in different parts of the organization. And I feel that a lot of HR leaders and companies still struggle with making it tangible. Would love to hear examples from you, how you've managed to actually do the amplification and activation of this purpose.
So this is definitely a topic that's very close to all the HR colleagues that we have in the company. But as the earlier panel said, that the purpose cannot be activated by HR. It has to be lived out by every leader and that they become the role models. So how do we do it in Sanofi? So we are a global healthcare company, so it's really important to have this clarity of why we exist. So our purpose is to chase the miracles of science to improve the lives of our people, the communities, and our own employees. So that's our purpose. So you will think that many of the purpose statements are a plaque on the wall, on the website, but how does that get translated to my everyday life, my colleagues who are here in the midst of us, and even to the receptionist, to the people in the manufacturing site, and also even supply chain? We are not doctors, right? We're not medical professionals. How does that come true to chase the miracles of science? Well, I would say that there is an intentional path that we all took in the organization. So before we actually launched this purpose last year, the work has already started. Right, so how many of you can share with me, in order to ingrain a purpose, what is important for all of us? So some form of participation?
Absolutely.
Anyone can share? What do you think is important to activate purpose? No? They're still digesting the coffee, I guess.
I was going to say, Billy, what did we put in the coffee?
Yeah, so I would say that one of the things that we started to look at before we launched the purpose statement is to look at what are the behaviors that is really important in the organization that we want to gear towards the purpose. So we have a set of what we call the play to win behaviors that was started before the purpose statement was launched last year. So with this statement, we have a rally call for employees that we should be proactive. We should be putting the patient in the center of everything that we do. Yeah, we should be stretching ourselves, going beyond. So these are the behaviors that is the setup for us to launch then the statement purpose of to chase the miracles of science. So that's the very first part. So it does not start when you put, the activation does not start when you put the statement on a piece of paper. So that's number one. And secondly, so how do we bring this to the employees? And in order not to be fluff, and we were chatting about this in our preparation call, how do we make this really concrete for employees? And that's where we look at how then do we redefine performance? How do we help the employees to look at the areas where they could chase the miracles of science, where they could create an impact? What are the things that they should stop doing because that's not bringing impact to the work that we are chasing after? So that's what we have done. So we've really looked also in our performance, the way we look at performance, and bring up the performance topic around impact, around well-being, around how do we get goals set that is meaningful to the employee. And in that way, we link it closely to the employee's everyday life. That's part of the activation.
That's great, really making it sort of closer to the employee for them to feel the overarching purpose of the organization, to really connect it to it. Kelly, I think there is a related question I have for you, because when we spoke about, like, you know, really focusing on that individual employee purpose that Menghui also referred to, and how you connect it to the overarching organizational purpose. And Boehringer Ingelheim has done a few things that are worth mentioning here. So I'm sure our audience would love to know.
Sure. So let me first share by saying that purpose is not something like you throw a big event and then, or you throw a big training or something like that, and then suddenly everybody will be like, oh, I get the purpose, I'm living the purpose, I'm doing everything to serve the purpose, right? I think purpose has something to do with actions from the past, actions from the present, and actions relating to the future. And in order to do that, of course, from HR perspective, we have to bring in certain events or certain things in order for people to reflect. Because I don't think people are conscious about reflecting on, okay, what is our purpose? Why do you come to work? Why do you work for Boehringer? Why do you not choose for another organization? So I think that was something that was intentional. And what we have done as an example was that last year during our Value Through Innovation Day, this is the day where we invite all employees, regardless of their function, whether they're in the manufacturing, whether they're in the plant, doesn't matter. We invite them all into one room and we talk about things. So interestingly, what we have done was we invited an artist to come in to speak to us about how she used her purpose to share her messages through the artwork that she has created. So I know the audience will be thinking, Boehringer Ingelheim, a pharmaceutical company, very regulated, artists, flexibility, creativity. How do we merge the two, right? And what we got our employees to start doing was that they spend time to reflect on their why. The question is so simple, what is your why? And then people start talking about what is their purpose. And then afterwards, they got a chance to, as a team, create an artwork that represent their purpose. And it was very interesting because when you start to emote the right side of the brain, where you have the emotions and the creativity, and then suddenly you hear stories where people were sharing around, oh, I work for this organization because the medicine was helping my father, my mother, my uncle, or even a pet that I was so close to. And you see the direct connection. I think when you are able to have that real, my purpose, Kelly Tate, right? My purpose and BI purpose connected, that's when you start to see the big shift. People are no longer just working because you have the big pay or you have the great benefits or you're a top employer, which we are, but because they really tie into that purpose, right? And I think that's the emotional aspect that is so strong.
That's lovely, and I think it's also something that David also referred to earlier when we looked at our own company values, like that fourth one that allows you to bring in your own value, helps you connect to the larger picture. And I think I've been sort of like being a broken record about it for this afternoon, but involving the business, and that's like, it's incredible that we have Fred here as a business leader. But I know that in your organization, it has been a topic related to especially also purpose-led employer branding and EVP. Would you like to share a few examples of how or what has been happening there?
So I think what's interesting for me is how do we translate the purpose towards the customer. I'm a commercial guy. I lead a team of customer success managers across the region. How is the purpose in the company translated into what employees do, and how does the customer feel about it? How do they react to it, and is it very inward-looking or outward-looking? And of course, we try to make it as outward-looking as we can. The other thing is, you probably don't know us very well. We are a B2B behind-the-scene company, but what we do is basically we power the industry of travel and tourism. We have about 200 markets that we cover. We used to say we are in more markets than McDonald's. We are everywhere around the world. So creating a purpose with such a diverse, and we have small site, very large site. We are a European native company, but we are very big now around the world, about 20,000 employees. Creating a purpose that relates to everybody is also a challenge. Every culture, every ways of working. And our purpose keeps evolving. So as every other company, it shows our commitment over time to the industry and to our customers. So originally our purpose was shape the future of travel. How did that translate is we were looking for shapers, for people that had a vision of the travel industry, how it would be in 10, 15 years from now. It's a very volatile, very dynamic industry. I'm sure all of you fly, go to a hotel, take a train. It's likely that the technology behind the scene is us powering most of your experience. So if there's a problem at Changi Airport, don't call me tonight, but we power the gates, we power the check-in system for Singapore Airlines as an example. So shape the future of travel was initial purpose that we have. And now we move to create better journey for everyone. And the idea behind this is that the word everyone is very important for us now. We want to open travel to everybody. So how do people relate to that? We make sure they are on projects where they understand how they create better journey. How do they improve the travel experience? So one of the problems in the travel experience is the friction. You go to an airport, you get stuck at security, baggage, check-in, going onto the plane. How our system can improve this. And we make sure people relate to this all the time, so they know what they're doing, improve the experience, create better journey, and for everyone. The for everyone was very important during the pandemic. As you probably know, we were one of the most hit industry in the world. Travel industry went down, we lost tons of business, airlines were grounded, I mean, we all know the story. But as an industry leader with purpose, we changed during that period of time our purpose to rethink travel and rebuild travel. And we embark our employee, our customer throughout this journey, say how do we rethink travel collectively? We created a work group, we embarked the people internally, our customers, to rethink, and then to rebuild. And now we're back to our original purpose. So our purpose is something that moves along the way, is here, it's a commitment that we have, and we make sure employees in their day-to-day can connect to it, so they know what they're doing. And it's a very simple purpose, it's few words, right? But people can know and relate to it in their day-to-day, the activity they do, and the project they're on.
Wonderful. I'm also curious to kind of sort of understand from you also, Minghui, like we're talking about leaders here as well, bigger picture and all that stuff. Has there been, I think one of the sort of, again, challenges is how do you make it authentic enough? Like, yeah, we claim that, you know, leaders should role model and, you know, the more they see you work a certain way, behave a certain way, employees will follow. What are some things, some specific examples of how you create that sense of purpose among the leaders and have them sort of make it more authentic of an experience for the employees?
So I think to the first question, the leaders play a great role in role modeling the purpose. But what exactly does that mean, right, in the day-to-day? I think there's a recurring theme around making it real for the employee. So what is the role of the leaders here? So in Sanofi, what we really want our leaders to do is to act in a transparent and open way. So it really addresses the posture that we want leaders to behave in the organization so that they can make that everyday purpose happen every moment of the daily work. So how do we do that? So we do have clear expectations for the leaders. We talk about that in the leadership behaviors. We wanted them to make sure that they invest in the development of our people. So we also believe that we should remove the barriers. Part of making it work in the organization is to make life easy for the employee to be at their best, to bring their best self to work. So how do we remove barriers in the organization that will support the employees to bring their best self to work? One of the things that we started to do is to remove some of the approvals in the process. So it's very concrete. In order for you to spend time chasing the miracles of science, I need to make it easy for you at the workplace. I'm going to remove certain approvals. One of the latest one that we did as a point of simplification for the organization to reinvent the way we work is to remove approval as simple as leave application, for example. Yeah, so that is one thing that we want to really make it easy and make it concrete so that the employee can fully flourish and thrive in the organization. So that's one. The second piece, of course, we want the managers to really spend time with the employee to talk about their career and to fully empower the employees to drive their careers within the company. So we provide tools. We have what we call a career hub in the organization. When employees are free, as soon as they update their details, the AI behind will actually match them to opportunities, projects, mentors, and also to job opportunities. But all these cannot happen if the manager is not supportive, is not acting in a way that would fully empower them. So we have also removed approvals from the manager in terms of the job application. So these are very practical ways where we make it easy for employee to be at their best.
This is so much linked with the employee experience discussion that we were having earlier as well, right? Like really keeping purpose at the center of whatever you're doing, however you're acting, and your processes, etc.
Yes.
And
to make it frictionless for the employee.
Because it's synced with your purpose. You decided to simplify. I have a follow-up question, so out of curiosity, is there like reinforced communication about this, like to sort of make the employees see we're doing this to simplify it for you?
Definitely. So the exhaustive way, Yammer, all the channels of communication sessions, they were talking about this, because once you remove approval, I think the employees are very happy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Find this newfound sense of autonomy, right? Little by little, yeah? So I think that's the magic of it. When you actually work on things that really matter to the employees so that they can focus on creating impact.
Especially the specific example that you've used, it's not very common to not have like the manager's approval. So that's pretty great. Thank you for sharing that.
If I may add a few things. what we've done is, we talk about culture early on in the afternoon, and the culture of the company is something that's very, very hard to grasp, but we all know it exists, right? It's all there. There's no book for the culture. Nobody has the book of the, I've been 25 years in the company. I can describe the culture, but barely, right? But I know what it is. So, and the culture at the end of the day lives in the conversation we're having. It lives in the conversation we have internally and externally, in the conversation we allow and we don't allow in the company. So one thing we've done, and it's a big transformational again, because 25,000 employees or 20,000 employees is a big program, but we're going through a transformational leadership program where we actually recalibrate the vocabulary we use internally, the words we use and the words we don't use, or the behavior we accept, the behavior we don't accept collectively. It's an invitation, of course, everybody can behave the way they want, but it's an invitation of understanding what it means to be committed, what it means to have a purpose, what it means to trust, have committed conversation, non-committed conversation, foreground versus background conversation. So all of this is helping us reshape the culture and in a way be more in sync with our purpose, which is a very inclusive purpose for, again, open travel to everyone in the world. So it starts from everyone. It starts from the culture and the conversation we're having, and it's a long journey, but we see a lot of impact in meetings now that turn to be a bit more committed meeting and less of a high-level conversation, and everybody goes back and do whatever they want. So that has been quite impactful so far.
That's a beautiful example. I love it because it's really sort of, yeah, you said you're not perfect yet, maybe, but it's a journey always, right? A journey towards improvement. Kelly, I see you have a comment, so
I wanted to add on to that because I feel like, yes, there's a lot of conversations and it's also living in all the decisions that the leaders are making. So I give an example, the year of COVID. Everyone was like, oh, we need to cut costs, we need to be worried about this, and we should be more cost conscious. And our managing director at that time said, let this be the year of development. Let this be the chance for us to take stock of ourselves and be ready for the future. And this is how we really live our purpose, because our purpose is about transforming lives for generations. We're not looking at short term, this quarter, are we going to meet the target? Of course we want to meet our target. But at the same time, we are looking about long-term growth and sustainability. And I think when leaders are making those decisions that impact people and have programs like what you mentioned, whether it's mentoring and people growth, it definitely helps to give the signal and build that culture that we want to have.
Yeah, lovely. Which begs the question, Kelly, I'll come to you for that first. Anything that BI is doing in terms of trying to make it tangible, to measure it?
Yeah, so I think the most obvious way, and in the whole room of HR professionals, is obviously the engagement survey. Everyone has that survey, and where you actually ask employees, do you feel proud? Do you feel connected to the purpose? So those questions are there. And we do have a lot of KPIs or dashboards that are related to sustainability. And in BI, we have 3 pillars along sustainability: more green, more health, more potential. But I don't think it's about the KPIs. I don't think it's about the dashboard. I do want to be more able to measure the emotions behind it. Because we all talk about purpose being how emotive it is, right? And I wonder if there's a way for us to really get to that. How do employees feel when they go out to the streets and they were vaccinating for rabies? Because they want to make sure that the community we live in is safe. I mean, those kind of pride and those kind of emotions are not as easily measured, but they are so important. So I guess that's an open question to the audience. If you guys have any idea on how to help us to measure the purpose in an emotional way, not in the art, not in the science way where we look at the numbers and so on, please let me know.
You read my mind. I was actually going to open up this question to the audience as well. Any innovative or interesting ways you're measuring purpose within your organizations? No example is a bad one. So.
They need more coffee.
I know, right? Well, there was too much coffee, now there's too less coffee, maybe.
So one of the things that I think is also important is and people relate to this, is how honest and transparent we are about the company. So we are a travel tech company, and we know for a fact that travel has a massive impact on the environment. And more planes in the air, more seats being sold, more money we make. But we acknowledge the impact of travel to the environment. So we have a lot of initiatives to actually help our employee connect to this better. So, you can work I was catching up with somebody working for a cigarette company. You also have, this to deal with as an employee, or if you work for, I don't know, weapons company. I wouldn't say travel is that bad, but how do we connect employee to this and the impact on the environment? So we have a lot of initiatives first through our product to help employee understand that we help carbon offsetting. Airlines can carbon offset. Our airport solution are very efficient to minimize the time at gate and rotation time at the airport. We help airline to load balance, weight their plane. So we really connect people, developers, R&D people doing this project. We say, okay, look, by doing this, this is how you also help in this environmental purpose area. But also we have initiatives. We have created one that's called, our company is blue. It's not, the logo is blue, it's Amadeus Blue, and we've created Green is the New Blue initiatives, where we actually plant trees in the Amazon forest. Everybody can contribute to this. I have my own tree with my name and a picture. We send that to every employee. As a prize, we work with Plastic Bank to remove plastic from the ocean. So everything that, because of course plastic related to travelers going tourism impact on the beach and throwing things, we take responsibility for this as well. And we make it public internally and externally. So these are the few things that we can do. In terms of measurement, of course we have a NPS for customer, a Net Promoter Score, and we have an eNPS for employee. And as a leader, I have it in my target. And I have another target on diversity and inclusion. So it has to be measured at some point what we are doing. We have things like, I have my badge here. I can wear a badge that is our Amadeus Pride badge, and it's everybody's choice to wear it or not in the company. So again, trying to connect people to our purpose to be a company for everyone. These are the few things. They are small, incremental things. The important part is consistency.
Yeah, but perhaps those small things are what eventually bring it all together in the long run, right? It's about making the employees connect, and I love that you're saying that, because yes, sustainability, you've got your company targets and whatnot, but how do I, as an employee,
day-to-day job,
how does my job connect to the bigger picture? You mentioned like making employees actually see how their job, even you're not doctors, you're not pharmacists, you're not on the front line of actually selling the product or whatever, but how do I, maybe working in HR or back-end office, connect to my purpose? Any other comments on that?
Yeah, so I just think that the authenticity in the things that we do is going to be key. Because that is a form of sustainability. So we have to be really authentic as a manager, as a human, as an employee, as a colleague. How do we bring that? So it goes to also about engagement, right? It's also about how willing am I as an employee to invest, seeing this purpose, my life, my career with this organization. So I think being authentic, and that's what we also need the managers to do, being authentic in their day-to-day interaction, being open with feedback, being concrete as well. Of course, we are talking about the super manager, and that's where in HR we support these leaders to be that authentic person in front of the employee.
Yeah, lovely. Kelly, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so as we were talking about leaders, I was just remembering yesterday we were attending a town hall and the leader was talking about numbers and so on. But beyond the numbers, what struck me was that at the end of the whole presentation, he said, we are going to touch 17 million patients. Now, beyond the numbers, can you imagine that's really our purpose, right? That's how we transform lives for generations. And I think when leaders are so good at communicating our purpose, you don't have to talk about, oh, our purpose today is transforming lives for generation, But when you say things like that, when you have things and numbers that really impact us, and you start to see that the bigger purpose out there, I think that's when people would feel the strong affiliation to the organization.
I have to completely agree with it, because I know that's what David and most of our ELT use. Once they start off a conversation in, like, let's say a company-wide call or whatever, like, yeah, okay, this time around, this many million employees worldwide are impacted by these companies being part of top employers program. So the number of companies is not as relevant as the number of employees we are eventually able to impact through the improvements these companies are making. So it's not just about the seal, but improving lives. I think I'll relate to, like, one way or another, I think all three of the companies are aiming for that.
Making
right?
it easy.
I'm also curious to know, like, we started talking about sustainability. And Fred, thank you for sharing that lovely example. I really like it. But when it comes to integrating purpose in HR practices, any examples come to mind that you're maybe proud of? Like, okay, this is how we've made the needle move within our company's HR structure.
Maybe I'll go first because I was reminded of earlier panel discussion where they were talking about employee stories. And I think that in BI, what we started doing was also having the employee stories in our employer branding. So having our employees tell the stories, and it was interesting because sometimes when they tell the stories, I start to realize that the same purpose could resonate with people differently, but it's perfectly okay. And it's fine, because the other day someone was sharing about how he was transforming lives through generations by mentoring someone in the organization. And I was like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but it was not intuitive for me initially. I mean, a lot of us think about transforming lives and we need to be up in the air, fluffy, or, going out there doing something.
Coming up with a miracle drug.
Right, but we are in all our little acts every day, transforming lives, and that is so powerful.
Absolutely. I think I'd share an example of DHL as well. Their purpose is connecting lives. So like every sort of courier who's delivering to a customer is contributing to that purpose. So they also have a lovely way of bringing that into the picture. Mingo, you had a comment?
I mentioned this earlier. I think when we shifted performance to look at impact, that shift is sort of a ripple effect. It helps us to be clearly identifying what are the things that where should I be spending my time as an employee in order to create an impact. That also open up different conversations with employees because performance, and if you talk about really being impact and really being about how do I be my best self at work, the manager have to open up these conversations around strengths, which is common for us, but also on well-being. But also whether I have, as a manager, stand in the way for you to accomplish and for you to bring impact. So for that, I think, of course, we are in the early days, but definitely aspirationally, that will shift the organization.
Definitely. Oh, I'm loving all these little examples that sound simple or easier said than done, but really contribute to how eventually you are able to get there. I think we're coming towards the end of this. I would just like to spend 30 seconds to do something fun, which we've never done before, is try to do like a rapid fire round with you guys. There are not many questions, so don't be scared. And it's like you have 5 seconds to kind of just come up with something that comes to you. So I'll just point and go, and we'll see. Yeah? Mengo, define future of HR in one sentence.
Agility.
Lovely. Latest trend that makes you cringe. Latest trend in HR that just makes you really annoyed.
Agility.
Now that's fun. Worst HR policy that was ever implemented in your organization?
Oh, there's many. The worst one, what would that be? Probably the travel and expense approval system. I'm a traveler and I sell travel, so everything that stops travel is a problem for me.
Love it. Something at work that made you smile ear to ear, something that happened recently?
That made me smile?
Yes.
Oh, it's every day. I mean, customer, employees, concrete example, I don't know. We had lunch with journalists today, and it was very nice because we just released a new press release. Journalists were coming in, and it was lovely to hear the journalist. So yeah, every day.
Lovely. Kelly, true or false? HR will always be process-oriented.
False.
One HR function aspect you think will not exist 5 years from now?
HR services?
Bengoy, true or false? HR really has a seat at the table now.
True.
One thing you will remember from the discussion today.
Today is to be authentic.
Lovely. Well, thank you so very
you.
much, all of
Very
you.
much.
Well, I loved the discussion. I hope you all did as well. I think we've come to the end of our panel discussions for the day and off to even more exciting celebration and recognition of top employers in APAC. So,
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, panelists, and also Amara for moderating the panel. Thank you so much. You may exit the stage. Please be careful, everybody. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the HR conference. I hope that you've enjoyed yourselves and also gained some very valuable insights from our panelists and speakers. So it's about 5:10 p.m. right now, so we're going to get started with part 2, which is the party. It's going to be a cocktail reception. It's going to be chill. It's going to be fun. We have entertainment lined up for you. And this is where you can feel free to switch your minds off and we'll have fun together. So ladies and gentlemen, if I may invite you to please rise, take all your belongings with you. Please proceed outside of this room. Turn to your left. I'll see you at the other room on your left. Alrighty, see you guys there.